All right, you are now live.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Grants Committee meeting for March 27th, 2024. We'll call the meeting to order and happily do the land acknowledgement. Is that the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and the traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. So just to check everyone's audio and video, we'll make sure everyone's here. Our co-chair and vice chair, rather, Joseph Allen, sends his regrets. Councillor Lindell Smith.
Hello, folks. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Councillor Becky Kent.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning, Councillor Lisa Blackburn with the bunny hat.
Hello and good morning, everybody from District 14. Happy Easter to all who celebrate.
Thank you. Leona Milne may be joining us later. We're not quite sure. Pamela Crowell is here.
Good morning.
Ayo Alajabebi.
Good morning, everyone, here on Spring Garden Road. Thank you.
And Alex Handyside.
Hello, good morning, everybody, from foggy District 5.
Great. And we're going to check in with our staff that are with us today as well for their audio and video. Team lead of grants and contributions, PJ Temple.
Morning.
Morning. Peter Grecian.
Peter won't be joining us.
Okay. Alami. And you know what? With all respect, I'm not going to try to pronounce the last name because I would most likely get it wrong. Would you please share it with us?
Okay, thank you. My name is Olaumi Odeyinka Bantaku, but I'm fine if you call me by my first name, Olaumi.
Thank you, Olaumi.
So I'll be taking over from Elizabeth from now on. So I guess there will be the last meeting Elizabeth will be doing early on. So from now, I'm going to be the legislative assistant for grants. Thank you.
Great. And our legislative assistant is Elizabeth McDonald.
Hello.
Hello, Elizabeth. And our coordinator for anti-Black racism, Russell Brooks.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Russell. Welcome. And with African Nova Scotian Affairs Advisor, Tamara Brown.
So Tamar won't be joining us.
Oh, okay. So everyone's here. That's to be here. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll ask now for the approval of the minutes of January 15th, 2024.
I so moved.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. Is there a seconder?
I seconded.
Think I saw Ayo. Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. And now we'll look at the approval of the order of business and the approval of additions and deletions. Elizabeth, do we have any additions or deletions?
There are no additions or deletions from the clerk's office.
Thank you very much. Then can we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. A seconder, please.
I second.
Councillor Blackburn. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Our motion is carried. Business arising out of the minutes, there are none. And now we ask for a call for declaration of conflict of interests. Seeing none, we'll go to consideration of deferred business. There is none. Correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Elizabeth, how are we on these?
I'll allow me answer that one.
Thank you very much.
Correspondence received from the class office.
Sorry?
There are no correspondence received from the clerk's office.
Thank you. Any petitions?
No petitions also received from the clerk's office.
Thank you. Presentations, there are none. Information items brought forward, there are none. We move now into reports. We have a beautiful agenda today, everyone. 9.1.1 is the revised proposed 2024 meeting schedule. And if the schedule is okay with everyone, then there's a motion here to approve the schedule.
Moved.
Thank you. Councillor Kent, would you mind reading out the motion there for us?
Sure. I move that the Grants Committee approve the revised proposed 2024 Grants Committee meeting schedule as outlined in the staff memorandum.
Thank you. Seconder?
Second?
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Our motion is carried, and we have an agenda for the year. Move on to 9.1.2 is the Community Museum Grants Program and the recommended awards for 2024. PJ Temple is here. Should we have any questions on this motion? So would someone put the motion on the floor for us? Thank you, Councillor Kent.
Thank you. I'll move that the Grants Committee recommend that Regional Council 1 adopt the amendments to Administrative Order 2018-010-ABM respecting grants to community museums as set out in Attachment 1 in the staff report dated February 28, 2024, and 2, approve 7 project grants for $77,937 and 1 new operating grant for $6,000 as detailed in the discussion section of the staff report dated February 28, 2024, at a combined increase in cost of $83,937 in fiscal year 24-25, from operating account M310-8004.
Thank you so very much. Is there a seconder, please? Thank you, Io. We now have a speakers list. We can go through to see if anyone has any questions on this. So first up is Councillor Smith. Councillor Smith, do you have any questions?
Nope, I'm okay.
Great. Councillor Kent, do you?
No.
Councillor Blackburn.
I just had a quick question or observation. I noticed that most, if not all, of the grants are located in somewhat rural areas. Just wondering, not that I've got a complaint, I'm just wondering how that came about, or is it because the museums that are more urban are a little more stable with their funding and they get it from other sources? It was just an observation. I just wondered if PJ had any comments on that. Thank you.
Over to you, PJ.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. It's partly because the policy of the program is focusing on community museums, and it excludes, federal, provincial, institutional museums. And typically, you would tend to see those larger institutions in urban centers. Secondly, it's also a function of who applied. So that should change year to year. So it's really, first and foremost, the policy, which is focusing on the small, volunteer-led, not highly funded. These are not government institutions. So that's really the focus of the program. And I think that distribution of awards reinforces the fact that policy is being applied. So, and again, the second one, which we don't control, is who applied in any given year. So,
true enough. Yeah. No, makes sense. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. Pamela, would you have any questions or comments?
No questions.
Okay. Io, anything on your plate? No. Alex.
Nothing from me, thanks.
Wow, that's great. I'll have to add a little bit in that I was really happy to see the Waverley Museum make the application and to be part of the program as well. So thank you very much for that. So seeing no further comments or questions or hands raised, we can call for the question.
Question.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Our motion is carried. Thank you. And the Rural Museum. Thank everybody. Our next item is 9.1.3, Administrative Order 2024-002-ADM respecting the HRM Anti-Black Racism Grants Program. And with us today, we do have Russell Brooks to answer any questions that may arise. If someone would like to put the motion on the floor, thank you, Ayo.
Mike here. Just give me 1 minute. Okay. All right. I put the motion down that the grant committee recommend that Regional Council adopt Administrative Order 2024-002 ADM, the Anti-Black Racism Grants Administrative Order, as set out in Attachment 1 to the staff report dated March 1st, 2024.
Second.
Thank you, Ayo. A second by Councillor Blackburn. We have a speakers list. Ayo, but would you like to begin as you made the motion?
Absolutely. I just want to say I'm really excited that this has come full circle, especially as someone who was connected to the ANSIO office and started this project many years ago. And to finally see that we are here today and this is being moved forward, it's really excites me. And I just want to say, just give the credit to all the staff and the Office of Diversity and Inclusion and the grants folks at PJ, for their guidance and support and the expertise to be able to bring this to fruition. So very exciting that this is happening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councillor Smith, you're next on our list.
Thanks. I echo Ayo's comments. I'm wondering, since this is a new program, if we could get, I don't think there's a presentation, but maybe Mr. Brooks can just speak a little bit about the goals. And we have the report, but I just think because it's new, it might be good just to hear from staff what the purpose of the grant is.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Russell, over to you.
Through you, Madam Chair. So yeah, thank you, Lindell, Councillor Smith. So yeah, the vision for this grants program is really to, build capacity in community. We're doing a lot of great things internally to address anti-Black racism and be more inclusive. This program gives the autonomy to community and organizations at a grassroots level to really to lead the work and really identify any areas that need to be addressed, any gaps, any barriers, things like that, and for it to be a community-led program. So that's really what the vision was for this. And we're looking for more ways to build on that in the future.
Thank you very much, Russell. Next on our list would be Councillor Kent. Comments or questions? Great. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I am so happy to see this finally coming to grants. This is, this is the type of policy that's going to make a huge difference in community. I'm just thinking about the community that I represent, Lucasville, and just the number of projects that could get off the ground because of this grants program. And further to that, I'm just wondering, is there going to be some flexibility built into the program, recognizing that perhaps a lot of the initiatives that are coming out of some of our communities are not perhaps they don't have the nonprofit numbers. They might be community groups that have been working hard, but they're not registered nonprofits, or perhaps programs that wouldn't traditionally be considered under a grants program, and wondering if that type of flexibility is baked into this program. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Blackburn. Russell, between you and PJ, I'm sure we're gonna have a good answer.
Yep. Thank you. So through you, Madam Chair. So yes, we do want to be more flexible with this program, and we have worked closely with community grants to try to make sure that we're able to provide funding opportunities for some individuals and groups that might not be eligible through other grant programs. So we want to make sure that we're considering ways that we can help fund and support those initiatives. And feel free, PJ, to build on that in any capacity too, because you've been super supportive in helping us bring this together. So yeah.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. We have worked closely. The goal here was to try and avoid confusion or overlap or duplication between programs, but definitely the focus of this program is grassroots. To answer your question, unregistered groups would be eligible here. It's a developmental program, and as Russell referenced, it's capacity building, and I think it's also culturally appropriate. Now, the Community Grants Program has always received grants applications from African Nova Scotian groups, and we would hope to continue to see them in the Community Grants Program. But in a developmental program, you wouldn't expect to see as many capital grants. But property ownership is expensive. You might not see that as frequently. So really, if you look at the scale of the grants in the anti-Black racism program, the maximum grant is $10,000. So very much focused more, I think, typically on project-based, although it wouldn't exclude small capital grants. And I think it's also an opportunity to address issues that would fall outside the range of programs and projects that we would fund under the Community Grants Program. So we would hope to continue to see groups representing African Nova Scotian communities or organizations in the Community Grants Program. They've succeeded, they'll continue to succeed, but there's some that we get that are misplaced, that they don't fit within the terms of that program. And so we would be hopeful that this would be a process where we could refer those applications to the anti-Black racism program, and they find a home there and are able to advance those kinds of projects. So, so the scope is a little broader than the Community Grants Program, but I think it's appropriate. And again, that can always be tuned in future years as things evolve. But we're looking forward to seeing it launch too.
Yeah, much appreciated. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Pamela.
I don't have any questions. I thought the report was incredibly thorough. It's great to see, but the report answered any questions I would have had.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Alex, over to you. Do you have any questions or comments?
Nothing from me, thanks.
Thank you, Alex. Seeing no further questions or comments, we call for the question.
Question.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Our motion is carried. Thank you. We now have a beautiful program. Thank you, Russell, for your work on this. We appreciate it. And now we move to 9.1.4, Administrative Order 2024-001, ADM respecting tax relief to registered nonprofit and registered Canadian charitable organizations. Now, on this one, we do have a presentation. So we'll do a presentation first and then we'll put the motion on the floor. How's that?
So PJ, I've promoted you to co-host so you can share your screen.
And my apologies for the lack of introduction. Carolyn Penny is also here with PJ to do the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well,
PJ, you're muted.
There we go.
Can you hear me now? Do you have sound?
Yes, but we just don't have the
Okay.
presentation back up yet, though.
Okay. So while Carolyn's working on that, Carolyn is a senior financial consultant with finance. So this has been a dual project, if you will. By way of background for the committee, we're doing a presentation because this is what we hope is the last of 3 reports. The previous 2 went to regional council, and their last motion was to direct staff to develop an administrative order for the new program. So we're going to do a presentation because the policy itself is probably 25 pages long. It's very technical. It has taken months to develop with legal services, and quite frankly, it's dry toast. So we're going to do an overview of the main points, and then after the presentation, we'll table the motion for debate, and we're here to answer your questions or your suggestions going forward. From here, if it's approved, then we'll go to regional council, and they will make the decision with respect to actually implementing the new policy in 2024.
Thank you.
So,
okay, the screen we've got is not presentation mode. Is there a way to just get this presentation slide up?
Okay, let's try
I
again.
can also share my screen. I have the presentation on hand here, if that would be easier, and you can let me know when to go to the next slide.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. It'll just be one moment to get that up, and I will let you know when it's ready. All right, is this full screen for everyone?
It is. It's marvelous. Thank you.
Perfect. And just let me know when you want to go to the next slide.
I will. Next slide, please. So this is just overall the background. I'll do half of this, and then when we get into technical math, computer-related stuff, I'll hand over to Carolyn. So we've taken some of the main points, but not everything from the staff report. The staff report is quite lengthy, and really this final report was bringing forward additional changes, many of which are procedural, but some of which are policy as well. So again, we're going to do, if you will, a high-level presentation, but if you have specific questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Next slide, please. So you can see from the slide, the origin of this review dates back to 2011, an auditor's report. The auditor's report wasn't very detailed, but it did point out the inconsistent levels of tax relief, which is largely set, I think, due to the lack of detailed criteria in the initial bylaw T200 and then subsequent administrative order. And that inconsistency in level of tax relief to groups providing similar programs has created frustration and confusion. It's taken us till 2023 to actually get launched with, first of all, a conceptual report to the February meeting of Regional Council. So that was really an approval in principle to proceed with more detail. The council did ask staff for a supplementary report. The concern raised there was the maximum tax payable for very large organizations. This program, I refer to it as going from soup to nuts. We go from very small groups, albeit they may own a property, to very large groups with multi-million-dollar properties and multi-million dollar accounts. So very wide range of activities and capacity. So we completed that report in April of 2023, and that was the point at which the maximum tax payable threshold was increased to $25,000 and uniformly across all the categories. That was also the meeting that Council asked us to develop the new AO. Next slide, please. Next slide.
Oh, no, you're good.
Oh, good. Okay. So some of the issues that we've been trying to address through the redesign, the schedule names and exemption levels are really not very clear for the general public. It creates confusion as to what should I expect by way of tax relief. They're very technically named. So we've renamed the schedules, we hope, in plain language. And so a prospective applicant has some sense of where they may or may not fit with this program. We've also drafted, just for illustration purposes, in previous reports, this is what the distribution might look like of those properties in the current program. And there we're trying to demonstrate, we're trying to sort within these categories according to new criteria and putting similar programs and similar services at the same level. So for example, we had some community halls receiving full exemption, and then there were others that would only get partial exemption. That creates confusion and frustration as to, well, why the difference? And it wasn't a really strong response to come back with, well, they were put on pre-amalgamation, or in that year we didn't have enough of a budget. So this way, it should be more transparent, the decision-making process. The billing to groups, because all these calculations have been done to this point on a spreadsheet. And as we pointed out in the first meeting with the council, at that point, the Excel spreadsheet had 9,000 data points. I think now we're up to close to 20.
It's about 20 now.
About 20,000 data points. And then you have to transfer that data into the computer tax billing system. So very labor intensive. We were only able to get to one tax bill a year in the fall. And part of the goal of the redesign is we need to change the formulas in order to calculate the tax relief so they can be computerized. And the goal is to get to a point where we can issue 2 tax bills a year. That will help the groups in terms of the cash flow and drives an efficiency just for ourselves in administering the program, but hopefully also for the groups too.
Penalty.
The penalty for non-compliance has been a nightmare trying to enforce. So we did simplify the process where you didn't have to reapply every year. That was very arduous, time consuming, and really you're looking for a cause to remove somebody. The penalty has been simplified in the new process, but we do need to have people report annually. At the present time, and we'll continue with this, it's just a one-page, we call it a compliance form. That will go with the fall tax bill. But in retrospect, we gave too long to submit that. They have until June. Well, if their day is anything like mine, other things intervene, and 6 to 7 months, I've long forgotten. So we have to pull that back. We've adjusted that timeline. We've tried to repeat certain timelines to make it easier to remember. And one of the key issues with the program is we need a guidebook for applicants to help them understand the program. Next slide, please. So in terms of the overarching principles, we're trying to increase predictability and consistency. So predictability, that comes about, I think, largely through having a minimum tax payable and a maximum tax payable, because the tax assessment values are changing annually. The municipal tax rate can change annually, and it's hard for people to predict, well, how much am I going to pay? So by having a minimum and maximum, that should help with predictability. The consistency comes about through having criteria for each of these levels, which we didn't have before. We simply had a formula, and precedents had favored some groups over others. So we're going to, or have, renamed each of the schedules, we hope in plain language. We've developed criteria for each of the schedules, and we're hoping to rectify the inconsistency between similar programs. And by setting that maximum tax payable, we're moderating, although we don't control, the fluctuations in market values of properties, particularly in the urban core or in some communities where there's growth happening. So that might be Fall River or Spryfield. And typically waterfront properties or coastal properties are also highly valued. So it's moderating that impact. Next slide, please. In the previous program, there was a schedule called Schedule 29, and those who were assessed commercial would get a conversion to the residential tax rate, as would other groups in other schedules. The problem with that conversion is it created a two-step process. So we've replaced that with a new formula, and essentially across all the schedules, everybody gets a conversion to a residential rate. And that moderates. We can't all move to Mushaboom where land values are lower, right? We're going to need to have certain services in urban centers where there's a demand for that service, daycare or housing and so forth. The minimum tax payable, we're proposing to start out with $150. That's per year. That's, we think, very affordable. Council did ask us, should it be higher? And when Carolyn did the analysis, we found that if you took it higher, you get a disproportionate number of rural groups paying more tax. That $150 is taken from the low-income homeowner program, so there's some consistency there. And we would suggest that that's a very reasonable amount to pay per year. And quite frankly, if somebody can't afford that, there may be bigger issues. Moderating cash flow impacts by using 2 bills a year. Simplifying the late application and late payment processes, and internal reporting. You'll see in the staff report, we're proposing to amend the format for how the schedules are presented. This is to give the public, and quite frankly, the participants too, more information at a glance. Next slide, please. This is a list of the proposed schedules with what we hope are simpler names to remember. Members of council might notice that in previous reports, we had an interim Schedule H. It was interim because it was for ground search and rescue organizations only, pending council's decision on a municipal registry of emergency services providers. In that time frame, council has approved that registry, and under legislation, those groups, the property they own, will now become exempt. So therefore, we really don't need an interim schedule. The information has been sent to property valuation services, and those groups will become tax exempt. So they won't need to apply to this program going forward. If PVSC cannot complete that change in this fiscal year, the backup is we would provide a recommendation to council to give them a grant for this year equal to what they would receive as tax relief. And then we should be going forward, tickety-boo for them. Instead, we've added Appendix 1. This is a record. Again, this is for transparency. It also helps us and the participants keep track of tenants who've been recognized in the program under the eligible property owners tax relief. And we can hopefully at that point add expiry dates. One of the issues with volunteer groups is you may have staff and volunteer turnover, and they might not be keeping good track of when this particular lease expires. By adding expiry dates, it helps clue people in. So if there's a change in personnel, there's a record, it's on the public domain. Next slide, please. These are very brief descriptors of what each of those schedules are. We will acknowledge that the term persons with special needs may be offensive to some, the argument being, I'm the same as everybody else, my needs aren't special. But what we're trying to do is say these are typically populations that wouldn't pay for a service or would not have the financial capacity to pay anything towards a service. So typically this category, they all have to be charities, registered charities. And that aligns with Section 89 of legislation. They are going to include things like food banks, shelters for the homeless. You don't pay in a shelter. You're not paying rent or a rental by night. Employment opportunities for persons with a disability. We would have residential addiction services. Addictions would fall under mental health. So they are specialized services and specialized accommodations. We have, for example, group homes for people with a disability. These are clients who could not live independently in the marketplace, if you will. Schedule B, family services, childcare, and dedicated youth services. Although daycares and the like are not part of our mandate, I think we all learned through COVID that childcare is an essential service to enable particularly single parents or lower income parents to actually enter the workforce. That plus youth services is also part of the HRM's community safety. So strong family roots help prevent later problems, if you will, later in life. So many of those will be charities. It's not exclusive. And family services would include family resource centers where parents can go for support services, educational, and so on. Schedule C, this is a very broad one. It's one of the larger ones. Cultural, recreational, environmental, and community transit organizations. Many of these groups provide programs and services that might align with municipal interests. Cultural is a broad term, but typically we've grouped their arts groups, crafts. Recreational would include leisure, so this is where you'd find your community halls as well as your sport club facilities. Environmental, those are often conservation lands or environmental advocacy groups programming to protect the environment. And we have one property right now, community transit. Those community transit organizations serve the rural community of HRM where we don't have a public transit system. Schedule D, affordable housing. These are independent living. They can have mixed rental rates. Some might be a combination of market and below market rental rates. They're largely self-funded, and the clients usually able to live independently. Next slide, please. So community benefits organizations, this is a bit of a catch-all. So if the organization applies, they're eligible for consideration, but they don't fit into the criteria for another schedule. This is typically where you would see them. In our draft schedules to council, we've modeled what that might look like. Many of these might be religious organizations, educational, fundraising, fraternal. and what I refer to as social club, meaning essentially it's happened by any other name, if I could put it that bluntly. And that's fine, you know, there's a purpose there, but we could perhaps self-fund a little more. Schedule F, organizations with vacant property under development. So this was intended to help those organizations, and particularly, I think, during this period where we have a housing crisis and there's a lot of large projects underway to build quite large facilities. So this really is recognizing that during that construction period, the subject property itself will not generate revenues. We have put a limit of up to 3 years. This is so that we don't get caught. We have in the past provided public funding to proposed construction projects that never materialized. And 10 years later, they sold at market value. The public has received no benefit in terms of a program and service to reflect or justify the public subsidy. And we're trying to avoid that situation. So what would happen in this case, if after 3 years nothing's happened, staff would recommend removal. If after 3 years we're 70% of the way through, staff would recommend we move them to the applicable schedule. So that could be affordable housing. It could be, I don't know, a sailing club, and they go to sea. So it's really giving them, again, the predictability of a time frame. I will say with the draft list, there are some properties on there that have been vacant and undeveloped for more than 3 years. We are proposing through this approach that they would get an additional 3 years. The reason for that is, to be fair to them, we didn't have policy in the past that would limit it. So we're not going to go backwards. New policy will start here and we move forwards. But again, it should give some predictability to those groups. Schedule G, organizations under the federal government Rapid Housing Initiatives Program, for the public and members of the community, of the committee. This is a federal program. We don't know how many phases there will be. There have been 3 so far. And these tend to be longer range agreements. So if these organizations receive what is typically significant federal funding, then they have to sign an agreement. The term of the agreement could be 10 years or even 20 years for some. And under that agreement, they have to keep the rental rates for these units below a specified level. So in some ways, it's artificially suppressed by virtue of that government funding. And they will have their own schedule so that we can track the expiry dates and compliance. And then finally, Appendix 1, this is a list of those eligible tenants. This is really partly an incentive for the nonprofit property owners to, when you're considering renting some portion of your property or all of it, you might get more revenue if you're leasing to an individual or a for-profit entity. But if you did, that would be excluded from your tax relief. Instead, if you have that additional capacity and you lease to a nonprofit or a charity, that tenant would receive the same level of tax relief that the owner would. Okay, so next slide, please, and we'll go to the techie stuff, and Carolyn will take over with the math.
Thank you, PJ. I'm on deck to bore everybody with the math. So as PJ mentioned, the current program calculations are quite complicated. There were approximately 20,000 data points last year to do the calculations in a spreadsheet, and then we manually have to add them to the tax billing system. And every time there's a change in tax policy, such as like stormwater area rate, the regional transport rate, the commercial tax AO, this causes quite a lot of issues in the calculations for this program because we're essentially removing it from our tax billing system, doing the calculations and putting it back in. So one of the overarching goals of the redesign is to simplify the formulas and the calculations. So our tax billing system can do the calculations, and B, so that people understand what we're doing and we can actually explain tax bills and just for more transparency. So we've come up with a tax benchmark rate and an exemption level. So each schedule has an effective rate, which is basically a function of the exemption level percentage and the benchmark rate. The benchmark rate is comprised of the urban residential property tax rates set by regional council every year. And they exclude fire protection area rates for communities, private road rates, and business improvement districts. We also have a minimum tax payable and a maximum tax payable, the same for all schedules as PJ mentioned as well. The highest exemption percentages are for Schedule A, charitable organizations providing housing and dedicated services for persons with special needs, and G, organizations under the federal government Rapid Housing Initiatives Program. Then the lowest exemption percentage is for Schedule E, community benefit organizations. Next slide, please. The only difference in the maximum tax payable as proposed is for Schedule D. For Schedule D, we've proposed 2 potential maximum tax payables, and the organization will pay the lesser of the maximum. So we're proposing a maximum tax payable per dwelling unit, or $25,000 maximum. The maximum per dwelling unit amount is 50% of the average total residential property taxes for a single family home in the municipality for the prior fiscal year, rounded to the nearest 50. So as an example, in 2023-24, the average tax bill for a single family home was $3,262. That's including everything, that not just municipal taxes, provincial taxes, just the bottom line that the family pays. And that means the threshold for this program would be $1,650. So I'm just going to walk through a few examples because I know this is a little bit different for this schedule. So next slide, please. So if we take a single family home that has an assessed value of $250,000, they have 1 dwelling unit. The calculation for Schedule D would be the $250,000 times the 0.55, which is the exemption rate from the earlier slide, divided by 100, gives us a bill of $1,375. The dwelling unit maximum is $1,650 because they have 1 dwelling unit. So therefore, the property owner would be billed the lower of those 2 amounts, which is the $1,375 before the exclusions, of course. So we would add the fire protection and any other community area rates or private roads on top of that amount. In this same example, if the property had a taxable value of $500,000 and 1 dwelling unit, the property owner would be billed the $1,650 because if we times 500,000 by the 0.55, we get $2,750. So they're billed the lower of those amounts. If we take a larger building with 30 units and an assessed value of $5 million, the property owner would pay the maximum of $25,000 before exclusions, as that's less than the 30 units times $1,650 and less than the 5 million times the 0.55 divided by 100, which is 27,500. So they would just pay the $25,000 maximum. So this $25,000 maximum for this schedule, this was an addition in April, I believe we added this maximum because we did find in our analysis is that there was a bit of a disparity between larger buildings that had high assessed values and a lot of units. The tax bills were higher in proportion to a lot higher in proportion to other similar properties and other schedules. So this was to create a bit of equality between schedules. Next slide, please. So we just did a little bit of modeling based on 2023 participants as to who goes up, who goes down. So I just wanted to mention that of the organizations that have the largest increase, the top row, $5,000 or more, most of these organizations are currently receiving 100% exemption. So we did expect that they would have quite a bit of an increase in their taxes, and this is basically to align with other organizations providing a similar service. There's some recreation organizations in that in that count as well. So next slide, please. So one new thing we wanted to bring forward for your consideration is this is our alternative option. And through program analysis, we discovered that it's approximately 60% of the properties in Schedule D are eligible for the provincial assessment capped program, so referred to as the CAP. The alternative option proposes decreasing the percentage discount that these properties receive from 50% to 25%. So basically what this would do is we'd have Schedule D would be the exemption percentage is 50%. However, if the property is capped in the capped assessment program, their discount would only be 25%. The reason being is the difference between the market value and the capped value for these properties ranged from $28,000 this per year to $2 million per property. So it's quite a disparity. These properties can save a significant amount of money being in the capped program. Just some average high-level math, it worked out to be $1,750 per property, calculated using the benchmark rate without any exemption added to that. So this kind of came into our analysis as I'm not sure if anyone remembers, but back in, I believe it was October, there was a CBC article referencing the Dartmouth Nonprofit Housing Association, and they have properties in the program, I believe approximately 62 properties, and their properties are not in the provincial CAP program. And they were wondering if the provincial government would be open to looking at the legislation on the Assessment Act about changing the CAP program. And I believe the article indicated at that time that the provincial government wasn't open to that. So while we don't have a way to change the Provincial Assessment Act, we just saw this as potentially a way that we could create some equality between organizations in Schedule D providing similar housing. So just something to consider as we're working our way through this. Next slide, please. So the cost of the redesign based on 2023-24 data is approximately $600,000. The total 24-25 budget implications, including new applications and property assessment increases in 2024, is approximately $7.5 million, and this was included in the fiscal budget that was presented a few weeks ago at Regional Council. We have a chart here to just show that the majority of annual costs are attributed to renewals. The assessments in this program can increase. They typically, for the past few years, have increased higher than the average assessment increase in HRM. So that generates a cost pressure in the program. The $6.4 million as well doesn't include savings realized last year from, we built fire protection for the first time last year, and we did realize some savings from the commercial tax AO last year. So just to normalize the year-over-year costs of it, those were removed from the data. The last thing I'll mention is with the integration of this program into the tax billing system, HRM is working on a project to create some synergies in grant reporting. So there's a project underway with our performance excellence team to be able to working towards creating a report that shows unified grants reporting for an organization across all grant programs in HRM. So we'll be able to look at one organization and look at $1 figure that they're getting from any program such as tax relief, community grants, museum grants, affordable housing, counselors district funds, like even a land lease. So by implementing this program in this system, we're able to capture more data to give us the ability to actually incorporate this program in that project. So that would be a pretty big win as well. So I'll turn it back over to PJ to chat about how we're going to tell people about this. So next slide, please.
Thank you. So we'll finish with the communications plan. So what are the next steps forward? So the grants committee will make a recommendation, a vote on the recommendations today. Your report will go forward to regional council. And at that point, hopefully there would be a decision made. Once the administrative order is approved, then a communications plan will launch. So the idea is that every organization who are in the current program would receive a communications package. And in that package would be a newsletter with a general explanation of the main points. We will reference past reports if people want to look for more background or look at the progression of how things evolved. They will receive in that, so Carolyn will do all the calculations and do up these draft schedules again with, this is the total tax, this is how much your tax relief would be, and we'll color code them again, red or green. You go up, you get more, tax relief, you're in the green. Within that, so that gives people a sense of where they find themselves. We're also color coding those properties that are leased. There will be another report that will come later this year about commercial leasing. These are market commercial leasing. We need to address the leasing in a little more detail, and that's in response to a council motion. But for now, we don't want to create chaos. There's enough change as it is. But we will flag that so that they are aware it's under review. There'll be another report. But we're not proposing, well, mid-July, we change everything again. It will have to be transitioned if there is any change. There will be, for those who believe they're placed in the wrong schedule, according to the criteria, an opportunity, this is a one-time opportunity, again, to help with transition. If they feel they're placed in the wrong schedule, they will have an opportunity. We can't call it an appeal, that's a legal technical term. So we're calling it a request for review. There'll be a form, there'll be a deadline, and they would submit the financial information and their articles of incorporation, a brief, and by brief, 1 to 2 pages. This is why I think I'm in the wrong schedule. And that will be reviewed along with the applications that we received to be added to the program. And council would see that with the schedules in the fall with our 2024 report for renewals and additions. There would only be one request for review by organization. And the reason for that is that we're trying to moderate the disparity, if you will, in capacity amongst our participating organizations. In other words, if you send in a petition or a 20-page missive, or you're using social media to lobby, we're not going to include that in our review process, because someone like a seniors club in Upper Muscatawbet does not have that same capacities to self-advocate. So we're trying to moderate that, but give everybody an opportunity. Now, for some organizations, it will be worded a request for review per property. So, pretend example, we have an organization that has shelters and transitional housing and independent housing for women leaving domestic abuse. they may wish to appeal on 2 properties. Okay, there's 2 forms, or make your case. And with that communications package, there may be custom letters that will go out to some organizations. So simple examples, there's one group in Schedule C whose property falls below the $150 minimum payable, whereas 2 of their other properties meet that threshold and will remain in the program. So their custom letter would say, these 2 properties are in the schedule. This one, the total tax does not meet the threshold. We will recommend its removal in 2024. So you have to do a little customizing just to help guide people's expectations and give them an ability to plan for that. Our webpage will also be significantly updated. We remove reference to the past program. We can link the reports. We can put up something like a PowerPoint display and so on. So we need more information there. All these requests for review will come to us. And Carolyn is also going to, us being staff, but Carolyn will also create for elected officials those draft schedules that are organized by the district. So each council will have their own district package. And that really gives you a heads up of who's in the red, who's in the green. And then we know who's going to call. And that's really just informed. It's helping the councillor anticipate and helping if they have any specific questions of us, we're the resource to that elected official, okay? We could also send something to the council support office to help with, let's say, an insert in a newsletter or social media. So again, we have to work together to channel these to the right place, the right process, and then move forward. We'll also have to set up internal communications, particularly for HRM staff who deal with less market value leases or property sales. There are implications there too. Next, and the last slide. So these are our recommendations. I would draw attention to the third one. I have explained this in the staff report, but to us, this is quite important. Really approaching this, we have to focus on what can we, the municipality, control and what can we not control. And currently, the legislation requires us to name properties in the schedule as part of the policy. And that puts that information, rightfully so, in the public domain for transparency. The issue that we have is that would also catch facilities that are serving people fleeing abuse. So shelters for women and children. We have a couple there that are for youth. And we're not comfortable, frankly, putting those civic addresses or even an assessment number you can trace and locate the property. So we're asking council under motion 3 to request the government of Nova Scotia amend that legislation to exclude them from that provision. That's to protect both the clients, but also the staff serving at those facilities. We're not trying to infer indifference on the part of the province. We suspect that at the time that that policy was drafted, this was an unintended consequence. But given the rise in domestic abuse, given the findings of the Mass Casualty Commission, we would consider this a public safety issue, and we're asking for council support to advance that. And I would frankly hope it would be an all-party support, because for me, this isn't a political issue, it's a public safety issue. I think it's an oversight, but it could have unfortunate consequences. And the last issue would be if the Grants Committee or Council choose to pursue that alternative, which is with respect to properties that are capped. We have had legal services draft what that change to the administrative order would look like. So that's to save time, so we wouldn't have to loop around with the supplementary. And that's all, Madam Chair. We welcome your questions.
Wow, this is awesome. PJ and Carolyn, we've been waiting a long time for this, I know.
Yes.
If a member of council, of grants committee rather, would like to put the motion on the floor, then we can have our discussion and debate.
I can put the motion on the floor, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Please do.
I move that the Grants Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council 1 adopt Administrative Order 2024-001-ADM, the Tax Relief Administrative Order, including repealing the Tax Relief for Nonprofit Organizations Administrative Order as set out in Attachment 1 of the staff report dated February 19th, 2024, effective April 1st, 2024. 2, direct the Chief Administrative Officer to direct staff to implement the communications plan described in Attachment 2 of the staff report dated February 19th, 2024. 3, request the Nova Scotia Government amend subsections 89(1) and 4 of the Halifax Regional Municipality Charter to protect the identification of a residential property serving victims of abuse in receipt of a municipal tax exemption by excluding such properties from the legislated requirement the properties in receipt of tax relief be specifically named in policy. And 4, adopt the amendments to Administrative Order 18, the Revenue Collections Policy Administrative Order, as set out in Attachment 5 of the staff report dated February 19th, 2024. I so move.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Ayo, thank you so much for that. Councillor Blackburn, would you like to speak first as you made the motion?
I don't think I have anything to add that hasn't already been said. This is an extremely thorough report, and any questions that I may have had or concerns that I may have had were completely wiped out with the presentation. So I appreciate PJ and the team for this incredible. This is I understand this is a huge body of work, and this has been your focus for a long time, and it is very much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Thanks. Again, echo Councillor Blackburn. So I wonder, PJ, if you can just talk a little bit more about the feedback you've heard from the groups, because I know there's a lot that be considered under this program. So just wondering what some of the feedback you heard from them with the changes. I know you've heard from them on the past program many times, many years, but wondering on the current changes, if it gets approved, what type of feedback you've been receiving.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Smith, we haven't had much by way of direct feedback from participants in the program. I do think that once the actual change and the policy is made clear, then the my email is going to light up, right? And that's fine. That's due process too. So I think really, I mean, we did have a communications package drafted earlier, but what we found is as we were going through, it was too vague, and it came across as speculative. Things like as proposed, may, pending, and that just generates more confusion, more jitteries. So it was push the pause button, actually get the policy confirmed, and then you can give clarity going forward to the participants or future participants. So I think once that communication packages, and these will be sent by registered mail so that we know it arrived or it was rejected or whatever. So once we have those out, typically one would expect those in the red who are going to pay more tax would be most likely to respond. Others may have positive comments, but let's focus on what we think is coming. And then you look at the chart that Carolyn did, am I going to go through the process of a request for review because my taxes are going up by $200 a year? So again, if you're sort of scaling and you look at that list, there's 8 properties out of 822 that are going to increase by $5,000 or more. So yes, it could be high volume, but I think it will be targeted, right? And there should be enough information that groups can at least anticipate, where am I? And I would expect that some will appeal and want to be in the highest category possible, but that's why we have criteria. And I do think, too, in fairness to all the participants in the program, this is an important opportunity for them to make their case, because some of these files go back literally 30 years or more to prior programs under former municipalities. And so what information was required of them as of that date, who knows? And this gives them a refresh, if you will, to make their case again. But at least for staff and for council and for the committee, we would now have criteria to work with and not simply precedents, which was, let's say, volatile in its application and inconsistent, quite frankly. So that's the brace yourselves, away we go. And again, by creating those lists by district for the councillors, it gives you a sense of who may contact you. And really, in those circumstances, I think the best thing is to have them make sure they fill out that request for review and submit it by the deadline. And then it will all go through due process. I do anticipate if we had a high number of requests for review, we probably would do a separate companion report to the main report. So anything that we've received that we feel doesn't warrant a change, it will all be documented. It will all be in front of the Grants Committee and Council. And so any of that decision-making is transparent and it's part of the public record. And I really think that's the best we can do. What we haven't done, and the risk to the participants in this program, is we are not going to petition those who are paying full tax, the 160,000. Would you like to pay more tax so they can pay less? So it is a balancing. We have to take those other taxpayers into account, but let's get it out there and see what people say, what they feel.
Yeah, that's very, very, very helpful, because you're right. No matter how you look at it, you're gonna have people who are not gonna be happy, but also those who are just gonna be like, okay, this is as usual. So anyway, yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. Lots of good work.
And if I may, Madam Chair, there's also payment plans available to all these participating groups, and they can pay the bill in smaller monthly amounts.
Yeah.
Or whatever schedule works for them based on, let's say, if they rely on a government operating grant that's quarterly, they can set up payment plans with revenue to match their cash flow in that way. So there is help available to them.
Thank you, PJ. Pamela, do you have any questions or comments?
I don't think on top of that, I'm thinking, though, having come into this newly, kudos to you for tying all of those 20,000 points in your spreadsheet into what you've done. I can't even imagine. No, but questions were answered. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ayo.
Yeah, I think I echo all the other speakers. Very well done reports, and the presentation also answers so many questions. And I'm also glad, PJ, that you're emphasizing and bringing that lens of the fact that this is about public safety. So I think that's critical to realize that at the end of the day, this is why we're doing this, and this is why this is important. So very well done, and kudos to you and your team. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Kent.
Thank you. Yeah. So PJ, thank you and the staff for this. I'm sure it couldn't have been easy. As you said, many of these have been, inherited from before amalgamation and all of that. And sometimes at a municipal level, we need to push organizations into places and I think that this is a good gentle nudge to start that. No doubt when and if council approves it and this goes forward, there might be a new iteration later that we might have to look at, considering depending on if we have had feedback that could shift that. I particularly am pleased as a counselor to the way that you've incorporated and encourage are including ways for us to help support this as it goes out with a counselor toolbox per se, because we are usually the front end that will get get the call on concerns and things like that. So I say let's move this forward. Council no doubt will look at it again through a fine-tooth comb. It is, we for those who are on the committee who are not counselors, the fact that PJ came forward and said, this is complicated. There's a large report that goes with it. It's in a language we may or may not even understand. Is refreshing, because we've received 350-page reports, and it is around climate change or planning change, regional plans, things like that. So I say that to you, PJ, as well, so that you understand that how refreshing it is for us for you to approach it this way. So I say for this committee, I think that we're ready to move forward and encourage you to support it, as I will.
Madam Chair, if I could make a comment?
Yes, please.
Oh, Councillor Kent, this is a true story. We were very fortunate that we had a very senior lawyer, very experienced, draft this report, the legislation. Dr. Longwife has done this for years, taking months. He said an average of 7 hours for each page of drafting, and that's just the first report. Carolyn and I met repeatedly, and in one meeting I said to Dirk, well, I don't understand 23.6.4.2b. And he laughed and said, well, neither do I, but you wrote it. So out that goes. So we understand just how complicated this is, and we have had to go through line by line. And that's why I think it's so important to have eventually a guidebook, probably a series of little subject-specific newsletter, buying and selling, how to save money, a policies and procedures manual. We have to teach our own staff a basic understanding of this program. So, I would encourage council not to be intimidated by the volume, but to understand it is very complicated. Tax law is very prescriptive, but there's no such thing as a dumb question. Because if you don't understand, that tells us chances are 90% of the general public don't. How can we communicate that differently, better, or in multiple ways? So we'll certainly, Carolyn and I, give some more thought to what we can do to support councillors with the barrage yet to come. And if there's anything in particular that you can think of that would help, you just send us an email, we'll incorporate that. But thank you all for your support.
Madam Chair, if I could, I won't belabor this. I just want to say to PJ, there's one thing only that today I can say is going to help. Don't you dare put in your resignation anytime for retirement, because
amen.
Not because you're bad, but I'm just saying we need that ever. Okay, thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay, Alex, you've been waiting patiently. You're next up. Comments or questions, Alex? I think it just takes a few minutes for him to be able to get his audio and visual back, so. Okay, in the meantime, PJ and Carolyn, I echo all the compliments on this report and the presentation. It is amazing. I know it's a long time coming. And as a person who for, I don't know, maybe 30 years plus or more was making applications to this fund, I would absolutely know it well. But I do have just a few questions, if you don't mind. So one is, when we're looking at Schedule A, it was said that they would be registered charities. So I do know that there are some in Schedule A that are nonprofits, but they haven't gone the next step to become a registered charity, mostly because that requires an auditing function that the audit cost was so significant, it didn't balance out being a registered charity because they don't get the kind of significant donor contributions that would require a tax receipt. So is there any flexibility between the qualifier being a registered nonprofit as opposed to a registered charity?
Through you, Madam Chair, to you. We picked the registered charity is really aligning with legislation that would give an exemption based on use directly and solely for a charitable purpose. And quite frankly, I mean, we double checked, but I think we went through everybody who is listed in the draft. Schedule A are all registered charities.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, most of those would fall under the subcategory or the category of alleviation of poverty because they're serving persons with special needs. I think the only exception to that I recall would be the Special Olympics.
Yes.
That might have been community benefit. But yes, typically that type of work, food banks and the like, registered charities. Now, the thing with charitable status is not irrefutable, as we've seen from recent media reports.
Right.
And so sometimes when you get an application with a charity number, you do need to look at what is that category. Because we've had applications from groups that I would say were lobbyists or representing the interests of business and commerce and industry. And I couldn't figure out how would that qualify as a charity.
Yes.
But when you look it up, you'll see that it falls under advancement of education because the group may give bursaries to architectural students or engineering students.
Okay.
You'll see the same with, there are some professional arts organizations who have charity status. And I'm thinking, well, if it's a profession, how does that qualify? Again, you'd see that typically under advancement of education and then subcategory arts education. So charitable status in and of its own, you need to look into it a little bit to see what is the nature of their charitable activity versus what is their mandate.
Right.
So I think it's really important to keep that clear for that highest level of benefit.
True.
It aligns well in that respect.
Okay.
And while there may be some for whom an audited financial statement, it's only required for that one category,
Right.
doesn't apply to any other category. It is about that higher threshold of oversight, which is largely through Canada Revenue, but that's not a requirement in any other category.
Mm-hmm.
Arguably, that becomes a decision for the group. Is it an audited financial statement cost or is it tax? Right? That sounds dismissive, but once we start to get into variations on a theme, we're left with a piece of cheese with holes in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, it can motivate a nonprofit to look then at, because charitable status does also give validity to your mission, which is really good. So awesome on that one. Thank you very much for the district counselors package. Oh my goodness, that is going to be so helpful. You're a genius, Carolyn. Thank you. When we look at the package that, organizations are going to get, is there any way, so I'm sure that it'll be paper, but also be online. Is there a way to put your sort of that formula in that people can sort of tack in, this is what the assessment was, if this is the rate, this is what I may be looking at, so that people have, just a sense of how this works, how the math works. Sometimes when you can play with a formula like that, it gives you a little bit of comfort.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, we can definitely add those formulas in. I will also add the asterisks. There's exclusions as well,
Yes.
just so that it isn't presented as your tax bill will be this
Right.
amount. There's also a few properties where only a portion of the property receives tax relief. So those might have to be addressed in custom letters as, like 50% or 75%, whatever the percentage is where the property doesn't receive tax relief. So they would pay full tax on the other portion of the building. So.
And can you tell us why, I think I remember reading it quickly in the report, but why fire is exempted from it? Is that part of the admin order that it cannot be?
That's not part of this admin order, but it's part of, I think it's the charter.
The charter.
It's legislation. And I believe fire is actually a levy. So
Yes,
it's a levy, it's not a tax. So yeah, it's part of the,
I know people are going to ask that question. I was like, okay, I got to remember what that is. And
yeah,
sorry.
Sorry, Councillor, just to add on to that, it's the same reason why we charged, the same legislation why we charged churches the fire protection last year as well. We discovered in the legislation that we were legally not allowed to give them exemption for fire protection. So it's that same piece of legislation.
Right. And then my last question is, where it's such a significant change, are we going to be looking at sort of an evaluation component in a year to say, how did this work out for us? What have we learned? Have there been any unintended consequences that we now need to look at?
It might be too soon.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we could walk away with that one to think it through, I think a year might be a little soon, particularly given that we have the motion to address of council with respect to commercial leasing. That could send us sideways again. Okay. So I think we need maybe a couple of years. Like if we said council could direct us review it in 3 years, I think that would be more realistic because we have to go through this transition. There's going to be all kinds of change. Forgot this, didn't forget, So give the groups the chance for some degree of repetition before we evaluate, is it working?
Right.
From their, from their ability to self-manage, for example, meet deadlines, get the confirmation forms in. So I think 3 years would be, sounds like a long time, but I think we need enough practice behind us to be able to give an evidence-based, are there trends? Is there a recurring problem? Let's identify that and how we'd address it. I think if we introduce too many changes, if we got something wrong, yes, we have to mend it. But if we introduce too many changes, there's too much volatility, and then we're working against our goal of predictability. So.
Right on.
I think too, we need to go through a full cycle of tax billing because it's going to be a fairly large change, billing twice a year now for these organizations. So we should be able to bill the fiscal year 25-26. We should be able to do an interim bill. So it would be nice to get a full billing year cycle and just see how that's working for these organizations. If it's providing a little bit more, if it's helping them manage their finances a little bit better, if it's kind of causing, oh my gosh, we got a bill in March now, what do we do? So it gives us a chance to evaluate how the billing change is working as well.
And my last question is on the alternative option for Schedule D, because it seems that came about because we saw a gap, right? And so in terms of the process here today, we have this motion. Alternative D is not part of the motion. Is that something that you would see being considered when we go bring this forward to Regional Council?
If the committee agree with respect to the equity issue, then this committee can bring the alternative forward as an additional motion. So it would be number 5. And then that motion will appear in the committee's report to regional council. And then regional council would debate it at that level.
Mhm.
It can happen at either level, but quite frankly, if the committee members, the majority of the committee members are in agreement with that alternative, it's preferable to do it now. And Elizabeth, we would help you with the committee report because it would amend the financial implications for the program.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I would see that as an equity issue comparable to the nonprofit tax concession in legislation. Remember, in April, we discussed some of the large groups are paying per acreage rate. And that's a significant savings of thousands of dollars a year to them. We've excluded that from their tax relief. So now we've found this other provincial concession that has significant savings to the property owners not available to their peers. And we see that as a parallel, which is why we brought that forward with the detail of here's what you would say if you want to change it.
So members of the committee, I'd be curious as to your thoughts on the alternative D. It does seem that it meets a gap that was identified in the group that was there in Dartmouth, but we do have the current motion on the floor, and I don't see any other questions or comments. So we can vote on the current motion, and then if I understand correctly, Elizabeth and PJ, we can bring forward alternative option for Schedule D in a second motion. So, I got
Yes.
that right, PJ?
Yes, I mean, we can help you with the wording of the motion. We've got the technical legal nitty gritty there. And if you need a lead in, we can help you with that.
Okay.
But yes,
Well,
you would make.
let's do the original motion now. There has been a mover and seconder. We've had excellent conversation and discussion on an awesome report. So we'll call for the question.
Question.
Thank you. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. That motion is carried. Now, with the indulgence of the committee, I would like to put forward the alternative option for Schedule D. Elizabeth, would you be able to put that up for us in the chat, or?
Yeah, just hold on one moment there. Said it was alternative 3.
No, there's only one alternative. It's on page 19 under alternatives.
Yes. Okay.
So the lead-in paragraph, if the grants committee or regional council. So you'd start there. We've got the wording of the revised clauses. And then we just put in some lead-in wording. So it could be something along the lines of the grants committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council reduce the percentage discount from 50% to 25% for nonprofit and charitable organizations listed in Schedule D who receive the provincial assessment cap. And then below that, you actually have the legal wording starting at section 3J.
Because this alternative actually makes it better for them, right?
It doesn't make it better for those who receive the cap. They will receive 25% reduction in the balance of their bill. It makes it fairer for those in that Schedule D who do not receive any cap reduction in the amount of tax. They would stay at 50%.
Right.
Okay.
So So those who have the cap are already receiving a significant reduction in the amount of tax payable,
Right.
which their peers in that same schedule do not receive.
Well, it's interesting for the debate, and I do think that would be interesting to bring it forward to council as well. It may require a little bit more information, may require them to read that very, very full report. So that would be good. Any member of council wish to put that on the floor, that motion?
And that is pasted in the chat.
I'll put it since I have a quick question.
Excellent, thank you.
That grants committee could, so this grants committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council reduce the percentage discount from 50 to 25% for nonprofit and charitable organizations listed in Schedule D who receive the provincial assessment cap. And PJ, do you want me to reference the changes in the schedule as well?
I think it's helpful if you move down to that where it's in italics, where it's the actual wording of the motion. That helps give direction. And that would include as well as renumbering of subsequent clauses. And then it's for council, if they approve it, it's like a cut and paste into the actual AO.
Yep.
Then read this part that's in the chat as well. Add that to the motion. That
yes,
our admins can do that. So
that's right. So
I'm going to just start from the beginning and then include the schedule, if that's okay, Chair.
Yes, please.
All right. So the grants committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council reduce the percentage discount from 50% to 25% for nonprofits and charitable organizations listed in Schedule D, receive provincial assessment cap, and that
with the addition of the following.
Amend Administrative Order 2024-001 ADM to the following. 1 second. Let me just pause for 3 seconds. Somebody wanted to be part of the party. 3JIV, subject to clause 3JV for an affordable housing rental accommodations organizations 50%, and V for an affordable housing rental accommodation organizations in receipt of a reduction of the assessed market value under the Nova Scotia Capped Assessment Program 25%. I so move.
I believe there's a little bit more there, Councillor Smith.
As well as renumbering.
Oh, as well as, so that part too?
Yeah, please.
Okay, as well as renumbering of the subsequent clauses. And that's it?
That's it.
Okay, all right. Sorry.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that?
Second.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Blackburn. Councillor Smith.
Yes, so I wonder, because obviously council has to approve this, and I have no issue moving this forward. So is there further analysis that could be done with this, PJ? Because I know that there was mention of it, but there wasn't, because it's an alternative, you didn't do a deep dive. But from now until council, you can provide some further analysis on what this could mean for organizations?
Yes, absolutely. Through you, Madam Chair, absolutely. I mean, one, we're going to take away this presentation from today, and we can amend that and request a presentation to Regional Council for the very same issues that we've discussed today. And as part of that, Councillor Smith, we can elaborate on this. The committee could also ask us by motion to add an attachment to the committee report with more detail on this, which I think would help give clarification to the amended motion and address your request for more information. Carolyn can fill a page or two with all kinds of diagrams and details to help understand the issue, if that would be acceptable to you.
Absolutely, I would think so.
Okay.
Councillor Blackburn, any comment?
No further questions from me. Thank you.
Okay. The reason that I was thinking this is important to bring forward for discussion with more information is because the whole spirit of this, reform for the nonprofit tax is really about fairness and equity across the board. So where we're doing this now, let's bite the bullet and get as much in this as we can. So I'm really hoping that it will spur up some really excellent conversation and discussion. So, I appreciate that you did consider to put the motion on the floor for its consideration. Thank you. And Councillor Kent, you're back. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. My computer crashed. I think it's internet related with the weather out here. So I was finding it a little hard to keep track of where we were and what place we were in the additions to the original motion and such. So, but for now, anyway, I just wanted to let you know that I'm back, and also that I'll trust in folks that put that on the floor, and we can go to the vote if you'd like, if I'm the last comments.
Listen from, I think Io and Pamela have yet to
Okay.
any comments. So Io, any thoughts?
No, none from me. I think,
Thank you.
yeah.
Pamela?
No, the extra information that Councillor Smith requested on the alternative, I did like. That was a good idea. Yeah.
Excellent. Good. So now Alex, we'll try one more time to come back to see if you're here.
I'm here. Thanks very much. No, nothing further to add. Thank you.
Excellent. So now we'll call for the question.
Question.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Wonderful. Our motion is carried. PJ and Carolyn, thank you so very much. I know you're going to be all prepared for when this gets to regional council and another wholesome discussion. But if this was a trial run, you sailed through it, and as far as we're concerned.
Thank you. And thank you to the committee for your support, and look forward to working with you on this.
So next on our agenda is added items, and there are none. The date of our next meeting is April 24th, 2024. So we can have an adjournment, maybe from the Easter Bunny. I wouldn't.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you so much. We're adjourned at 11:46. Well, that's what time it is there. Yes. Okay. We're adjourned. Easter, everyone. I hope you enjoy.
Happy Easter.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you so much,
Easter.
everyone.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Take care. Bye.